some things just won't leave me alone. And this is one of those things. Recently I commentated on the fact that I don't care about the Duggars. The only concern I potentially have is that because Protestantism, ultimately being the more dominant form of Christianity in the world, I mean, let's not mince words here. I mean, Catholicism may be the largest Christian denomination in the world, but it's no longer the dominant cultural force in the world anymore. Even in countries where it's majority, Catholicism isn't really that big of a deal, except, you know, when they need to attract tourists or something. So, you know, ultimately, Protestantism gets lumped in with all Christianity. All of Christianity just kind of gets lumped into this big amalgamation, and unfortunately, you know, the people in Rome since Vatican II haven't done any favors in trying to make that not the case, because, oh no, we're all the same, we're all equal. Yeah, it's times like this I really don't want that to be the case, and I'm really glad it's not the case. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, recently, a couple days ago, I posted on my blogs and things talking about the whole, you know, Duggar family situation. And what is Duggar family situation? Well, I'd like to preface this also, first of all, by saying I'm not a real big fan of the show. I didn't watch it. Members of my family did. You know, it's TV trash, I guess, in my opinion. You know, I never really cared much attention for it. But apparently the Duggars are a big deal to Protestants across America, particularly the conservative strain. They're considered celebrities. And, you know, they back presidential candidates, and this makes them important. Yeah, I'm sorry. When your biggest supporter for your election campaign is a woman with 19 kids and her husband, yeah, why am I voting for you? You know, are these people important? Are they wealthy landholders? Do they own any kind of, you know, valuable real estate that generates resources for the country or where I live? Has their family done anything of note for this country that, you know, has improved it in any way, shape, form, or fashion in the last generation or so? No? Well, then why do I care who these people are in regards to them supporting, you know, a president? But moving on. My only concern with the Duggar situation is that because these Protestant groups get lumped in with each other all the damn time, my concern is that regular traditional families will come under attack, even if they're not associated with Quiverful, more on them later, even if they're not Protestant, even if they have nothing to do with the Duggars and want nothing to do with their, you know, glorification of what goes on, you know, regarding childbirthing and family rearing. I've always said that these branches of Protestantism that focus so much on the family are about 2 steps away from being a fertility cult. And if what Quiverful has to show me is any indication, some branches of Protestantism have been that way a very long time. Now, here's the part where I knew I would have to make this video. Okay, little cell phone. It vibrates very loudly, and I don't want to turn it off. So I just tend to kind of put it on silent and throw it on the ground or the carpet where it won't vibrate for when I need to do things. And this is the line that, in particular, had me very concerned. I saw someone post this on my Facebook page, who is also the person who pointed out to me that this was even going on. There's lots of mentions to the patriarchy in this post, too. Also, I hate wearing the headphones, too, but the open mic has way too poor sound quality, and I don't want all that background noise. Okay. Here it is. I think it's almost here. Alright. Alright. Describing the Quiverful movement, one of its former members says it's a cult. These teachings aren't any aberration of Christianity. Quiverful is a full-blown version. It's what you get when you take basic Christianity to its logical conclusions. Nope. Sorry, it's not. First of all, Quiverful was a movement that seems to have been started in reaction to the liberalism of the Anglican Church when they allowed birth control and contraception into the movement, into their church. This seems to be what started the Quiverful movement. I didn't have the time nor the patience to look much into these people because I want to be done with this as quickly as possible, okay? All I need to know is they're not Catholic, their beliefs are crazy, and apparently the movement has a very strong history of built-in sexual abuse among its families, and they encourage them to not report. So that's all I really need to know at this point, you know, after those facts are confirmed. That's all I really need to know at this point to talk about these people because it serves my purpose. Now, you see, no, okay? No. Quiverful and these other crazy Protestant sects who believe this sort of thing do not represent Christianity. They do not represent what the Christian family ethic is. They do not in any way, shape, or form define it. For one thing, quiverful is a heresy. Protestantism is a heresy. I know they don't like to say that much in Rome anymore, but I'm going to say it. It's a heresy. That doesn't mean I'm going to treat you any Protestant like garbage because they're heretics, but it does mean their opinions are wrong. I don't know if any of you remember this. There was a time in our history when we taught religion with the certainty of a scientific fact. I, for one, like to do that. That is how I believe. That is how the NSIR believes. So, moving on from that point, back to the main subject, because I can start to rant a little bit. These people, this quiverful movement, basically their whole thing is family and procreation and marriage and, the good old-fashioned Christian family ethic. And this sort of thing allows them to get away with, what they do, because, it's a religious group, it's a religious thing, so they can get away with, this kind of thing. They can go untouched, it seems like. No, that's wrong. These people should be just as subject to any kind of, police they should be just as subject to police investigation as any other group that would be doing this should be, okay? It's crazy and it's wrong, okay? First off, with this movement, the history of of covering up abuse reports it's just staggering, okay? It's absolutely staggering, okay? This is not just an issue that's confined to religion or to the people involved, okay? The victims of sexual abuse are scarred for life, okay? They carry with them psychological problems. They may have contracted diseases. They may be permanently damaged for the rest of their lives. There are members of my family who were sexually assaulted who are not able to have children because of the damage that was done to them at such a young age from the violent trauma of a forced rape. Okay? So, now that we've established this is something that will affect larger society for you amoral bastards who don't care anything at all about this, the fact of the matter is, it's in our best interest to prosecute these people. Okay? It's in our best interest to do this. Not just because of this, but because of a simple matter of justice. Okay? These women deserve to know that they are safe, that they can trust someone, and that their abusers can't hide what they do. Okay? It is of paramount importance that real, serious claims of sexual abuse be taken seriously, not be dismissed, and be addressed. Because for every predator that does not get prosecuted, they will learn what this person who did not get prosecuted did. And they will take that so that they can learn, and that's how you get these so-called pedophile rings, okay? These people who are basically professional pedophiles who make it their business to find vulnerable children and, abuse them. Almost to some of these children are kidnapped and groomed. This is not an issue. This is a whole generation of America that's being robbed of its innocence, that's being robbed of their, that's being developmentally, corrupted. This is a whole generation of people who are damaged. They are forever going to be hurt by this. The least you can do, if you cannot put them in a time machine and take them back to a time where this didn't happen to them, is you can make sure their abusers stand before the courts and, receive their due punishment. And, looking into all this, like I said before, my original concern with the Duggars is that because they're labeled a traditional family, let me wise you up to something, buddy. The KKK are now calling themselves traditionalist American Knights, and those people are not traditionalists in any meaningful sense of the word. They may be, Confederate traditionalists, but they're not my kind of traditionalists. They're not Catholic traditionalists, okay? They're not most people I know's kind of traditionalist, So, they're at least not Ebolan traditionalists. Furthermore, discussing these kinds of religious groups that allow this to happen, okay, that allows perpetuate. This is why I begrudge Protestantism as an institution. It just has a bad track record of letting things like this happen, doing things like this, and just, ultimately, these massive rampant abuses that take place because they simply don't, it's odd for a religion that grew out of that was a split from Catholicism, but Protestantism developed to the point of being so anti-Roman they just dropped almost all moral philosophy we had, I guess. So they started doing their own brand of craziness. And we've seen it down through the years, the witch trials in Salem, the workhouses in England. We've seen this time and time again. The treatment of Aborigines in Australia, we've seen this time and time again from these groups and the things they do. And they justify them because Protestantism has no ultimate authority, from a temporal standpoint or from a hierarchical standpoint. They have no uniform guide. They have no uniform system of theology. They have no, strict code they must adhere to. They have none of that. Unlike Catholicism or other older religions, they have none of that. They don't. Even Islam ultimately has a guiding set of principles that you understand what you can generally guess what a Muslim believes. You can generally guess. Okay, with Protestants, it's all over the place. Okay, you have no idea what these people believe. You can almost kind of guess based on what denomination they are, but even then, you don't know. Okay. And with Quiverful, this is a fragment of a fragment of a fragment of a splinter group, ultimately, from true Christianity. Let me just spell it out for you. True Christianity is Catholicism. That is what the religion was historically. That is the oldest branch of Christianity in the world. It is the only Christianity with a touchstone to the apostles that is untainted and unbesmirched by any kind of heresy or schism that damaged and contorted its theology. And it is the only religion on the face of the earth that can seriously make the claim, this is Jesus' Christianity. It is the only one that can make that serious claim. Okay? Now, granted, since Vatican II, they've been trying to do everything in their power to stop that, but ultimately, you can't point to a human person and say, this guy started Catholicism. You can point to what individuals started the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Anglican Church, the Lutheran Church, and you want to know a pattern? All these people existed hundreds of years after Christ, was even dead, They lived hundreds of years after Christ. If he had still been dead on earth, his body would have turned to dust. Okay? That's how... No, he's lived on earth. He's lived on earth. These people were not even alive when the body of Joseph of Arimathea's body was, still had some physical shape to it. It's dust now wherever it is. That's my point here. Okay? These people are not Christianity. Stop lumping them in with Christianity. Okay? They are not. Okay? I mean, you probably get different answers from Protestants who are going to defend the Duggars. I'm not in that business. Okay? You want to go listen to people defend a sex abuse? You want to go listen to people defend a sexual predator, when if he'd been, a Muslim imam or something, there would be no question of his guilt and he should be tried and hanged, even if the accusations were 20-something years ago, there would be no question about it. Okay? But because it's one of their own, there's a question about it. This is why I hate partisanism, okay? Whether he's a Republican, darling, or a Democrat archfoe, he should still be tried for his crimes. According to everything I've discovered, he was never arrested for his crimes. He was never brought before a criminal court, not even juvie. Okay, this kid didn't even do time in juvie. He did not even get a pair of silver bracelets slapped on his wrist and get taken downtown. Okay? He didn't even get that. He didn't spend a single night in jail, even in holding, for anything that he did. And this guy abused his own sisters. And another just completely random, unrelated girl. So on top of being a sexual predator, he's an incestuous freak. Okay? On top of all that. The fact is, I don't care about this man's political persuasion. I wouldn't care if he was one of my own. If you're going to seriously sit there and you're going to sexually molest your sister, you have problems. If you will not, you have problems. You have committed a grave sin against God and a grave sin against justice and peace. You've permanently scarred someone. You need to face justice. Castration at the minimum, or serious beatings in that general region of your body, at the minimum. The fact is, this guy needs to go before court. And apparently, the city where this trial took place in, I think, Springfield, Arkansas, or this all took place in Springfield, Arkansas, the court has expunged his record. The case files have been destroyed. So not only is this a cold case, the case files have been destroyed. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. So not only did they take no legal action when this happened, they've expunged the record. Okay. Someone gets on for the Department of Justice to Arkansas right now and figure out why they did this. Okay. And furthermore, why was the record only just now expunged when all this became media? Out in the open media. Apparently this has been in the media since 2006, floating around the internet, but only just now it's come up. That in and of itself is suspicious. But, for all the time that could have been spent, investigating this when it was still fresh, before they became nearly untouchable media darlings, someone has to be held accountable. Some judges whatever judge ordered that needs to lose her right to practice law. Needs to be revoked immediately. because that's ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid. This man needs to be held accountable for what he did. Evidence needs to be compiled. And furthermore, if his family had a hand in covering this up and hiding it from people, from the law, then something needs to be done. Thirdly, okay? Thirdly, what's the term? Yes. Thirdly, apparently his family didn't necessarily keep this secret. Apparently, at least now, Josh Duggar's wife Anna claims to know about what happened with his sisters. She found out about this at some point and still decided to stay with him, according to her at least. But the way the Quiverful movement works is, basically the women have no rights. The women have no say. The women are treated, poor. The women are, they're baby makers. That's what I can gather from all this, okay? Which is not what Catholic family moral ethic, what Catholic family ethics is. It's not. Now I can finally get people to shut up who say they're going to be the Catholic version of the Duggars. I think I may have said that at some point. I don't know. Either way, we should all feel stupid for doing that. We should all feel stupid for doing that now. Moving on. This whole thing, okay? This whole thing is a mess, all right? The only thing I care about is that ultimately other traditional families will come under fire because our justice system is completely democratic at this point, okay? The mob controls these rulings, okay? The mob disregards the rule of the courts, okay? It does not trust law enforcement. They don't, and I mean, can you blame them? Can you blame them? Can you blame them? I mean, I will never raise a child anywhere in Arkansas. I will never raise a child anywhere in Arkansas if, their response to a criminal investigation involving sexual, predation is that, some family can just go down to a judge and wring their hands and say, oh, little Josh didn't know any better, we're sorry, here's $500, can this go away? I feel like money had to have been dropped somewhere, but maybe not. Josh Duggar, shortly before all this came out, if I understand correctly, shortly before all this came out, dropped his position from the Family Research Council. I've theorized this could be an attack by political enemies, either outside of the party or within. Hey, someone's got to get that job now that Josh is gone, right? So, it could easily be that. I'm not denying that foul play came up here probably in the raising of these allegations, and in which case it did, it should be pursued to such an effect that the people who would benefit should receive no benefits whatsoever. Because this is about justice for the families and the victims involved in all this. It's not about someone being able to benefit off this man going to jail. So, now that I think I've touched on that sufficiently enough, here is the reason why I can find in the simplest speaking possible that I believe, in, Catholicism as the state religion. I believe in, church and state. I don't have a problem with it. Working together as separate sovereign spheres for the betterment of society. I don't have a problem with that. And the reason I believe in that is because situations like this, okay? I am for, and Catholicism's realms have traditionally been for, the free exercise of religion. Where religious practice became a question was when the large sections of this religious population were, A, subversive, or they were subversive. They attacked the church, they attacked the establishment, they attacked royalty, they inspired insurrection in the realms. You can look to the Albigensian Crusade and to the Protestant Revolt for any number of examples of that. This is why these religions were opposed, was because they became dangerous to public discourse. There were many heretical religious movements that emerged in Christendom that never got a sword raised against them. They were scholarly issues, and they were, ended. There were several religions, that challenged Catholicism, these heresies, that never once, went before any kind of inquisitional court, in terms of being tried and executed. There's tons of examples of that. And ultimately, here's the thing, okay? When you relegate religion to a matter of opinion, okay, when religion is no longer treated as a science, okay, theology used to be queen of the sciences. It is the study of God. It is the highest science there is, okay? So when you're dealing with, problems that arise from a religious perspective, how do you quell them? How do you correct them? How do you deal with them? how do you, ultimately people can say, oh, state church is bad, you don't want to influence people's ideas. Yeah, bullshit. Okay, I'm calling bullshit, straight up bullshit. There will always be a pervading system of thought that is enforced, that is, that is made the ideology of the people. There will always be one. It may not be an open state church, but it will exist. For America, it's our patriotism. It was our patriotism, our doctrines of the Constitution for a long time. You couldn't question, the freedoms afforded in, America is kind of our religion. Freedom, yeah, Team America, all that stuff. That's kind of like our religion, this guiding philosophy that guides us. In the USSR, it's communism. In China, it's communism. In Muslim countries, it's Islam. In secular countries, it's secularism and liberalism. There is always some idea, some intellectual force that is going to be what holds sway over people's minds. There will always be something there. People need that. When you try to totally take that from them, they become sick. They turn to debauchery. They become amoral. They lose all sense of conviction and guidance, much like what's happening in the modern U.S. today. Anything could come along and give these people meaning at this point. They stand for nothing, they're going to fall for anything. That's ultimately what it boils down to. These dangerous ideas will foment, and people say, oh, we believe in freedom and stuff, but we don't want to force our ideas on anybody. Yeah, bull. If you're not going to do that, you're at least going to shut down opposing ideologies, either in the public square, on the internet, in the news, in the media, or through some kind of legal action. And, there is no difference between, Emperor Francis I of Austria, or Francis II, Holy Roman Emperor. There's no difference in him banning nationalist material in his country, or the U.S. banning communist material in their country during the Cold War, or banning, or there would be no difference in that, okay? You're still circumventing the flow of ideas. Even the French Republic held, one of the most liberal regimes in the world, still, supposedly liberal, whatever, revolutionary is the better word. They still held a monopoly on ideas. There were certain things you could and could not. You could not be a sympathizer of the monarchy and live long in the French Republic. You would either be leaving for your life or you would be killed. There's a lot of ways to die in the French Republic. In the Reign of Terror, take your pick. It's a veritable capital punishment buffet. There will always be a system of oppressing ideals, and there will always be a system to justify it. Because ultimately, there are some ideas that are just dangerous. Why do you think Germany, Germany, I think, learned this the hard way. Germany, Berlin used to be a very, very enlightened, liberal part of the world. Okay, it used to be that way. We used to associate Germany with cold, staunch, iron, blood and iron conservatism. But Berlin used to be a very liberal part of the world. Ultimately, Nazism and fascism are all revolutionary ideas. They're all ideas that only could have emerged in a country where freedom of thought was, or freedom of expression and no restriction on political parties was enforced. Now, granted, with things like the beer hall puts, you did see, the German government step up when, or the Weimar Republic step up when, people threatened the public order. But that's a bit different. Ultimately, Germany now, they ban Nazism. They ban the party. Anything that smacks of Nazism, you can't even own anything with a swastika on it in Germany. Even war films and educational films are controversial for that. Okay, the game Wolfenstein, a game where you literally play a Polish American who goes around killing Nazis in any possible way you can imagine. They cannot show swastikas, okay? In the original game, that's why the W symbol was all over everything, and the swastika was barely there, because they wanted to sell the game in Germany. And in Germany, you can't have swastikas all over the place. You just can't, okay? It's against the law. If you walk into Nuremberg Square with a swastika on your arm, with a swastika armband on, you get like an automatic 20 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. That's whether you serve prison time or not. You're paying something like a $5,000 fine, or it's really steep. I don't remember what it is, but it's a really steep fine. I remember hearing it and saying, Jesus, I mean, my wallet hurt already. I'm not even a Nazi. My wallet hurts already. Just that much money. And so you will always have. Germany realizes Nazism is a dangerous idea. It dragged their country into a war with the entire planet, and a few, mean-nothing allies, oh, Italy, yeah, they weren't a massive joke by, the 20th century. They weren't a brand new country or anything, that had just recently stopped being divided among various powers and or, independent city-states. They didn't at all have a reputation for being shifty. You know, these factions that didn't mean anything. Dragged them into a war with the whole world that ended in the absolute complete destruction of their economy, of their country, of the death of millions of their people. Ultimately, it was a failed ideology that failed their country. It did not make them strong. It did not make them better. It doomed them. It absolutely doomed them, okay? From a management standpoint, from a diplomatic standpoint, from a war standpoint, okay? Germany recognizes that Nazism is an evil idea. There are many people, even the most liberal Americans, who would say we should ban certain ideas. Anything from Islam to white supremacy to, un-American, unpatriotic ideas to communism. There are many Americans who think we should ban certain schools of thought, and they wouldn't be wrong to think that. I could get behind banning any kind of race supremacy, or race politics. I could get totally behind something like that because it divides the country. You need people to identify with themselves as Americans, not as some flimsy race. So my point is, you will always have ideas that are considered bad and good in any country. There will never be a country that is completely free thought. It will never exist. Now, in intellectual places and circles like colleges and universities or private parlors, there will be a certain level of social acceptance of ideas because you're just talking about things. But there's never going to be a country where any political idea is considered, every political idea is considered fair game. Even in America, it's not like that. We don't necessarily have a system of, thought police, but we do have, the media, public opinion. Americans being conscious of democracy and republicanism as a main philosophy, at least subconsciously, they care what other people think about them. They care what their neighbors think about them, They're conscious that there are consequences for their actions, If you're employed by a black man and, you believe in National Socialism, you're probably going to get fired if he finds out. It's that kind of a thing. It's that kind of a thing. So ultimately, this is why I say, not just for my own nation, I do think Catholicism would be a beneficial force to the United States of America. I believe in that. George Washington believed in that. You can check out his letters to Charles Carroll of Carrollton. You can check that out if you want to. He even explicitly banned Guy Fawkes Day as one of his first acts as any kind of leading authority figure in the colonies. He banned the celebration of Guy Fawkes Day, where they burned the Pope in effigy. And he criticized his soldiers for exhibiting anti-Catholicism. So, there's that. Now, moving on to talk more about, I just think you need some kind of idea that drives a people. Otherwise, they become directionless. They become, they care about nothing. Like I said, you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. That's how it goes. People need a cause. Even if that cause is just themselves, even if that cause is just looking out for me, people need something to believe in, if not themselves, and, leaders are a minority, there are very few people who could just, live on them, everybody needs some kind of thing that drives them, whatever that may be, and it's in the interest of, a state sometimes know what that is, it's good to be a leader of a nation where people like your nation. I would hope your own people like your country. Wouldn't you? If you're the head of state, wouldn't you want your own people to like the country you're in charge of? I think it'd make you more eager to do your job. So, you see the point I'm making, right? There's ultimately always going to be some kind of thing that controls that. If not the church, it will be something else. In my opinion, you can't get much better than the Catholic Church. You can't get much better. What the Vatican II Church has done aside with their whole, sex abuse scandal of their own, the Inquisition specifically stopped these kind of things. You know, to say how the Catholic Church would deal with something like, I don't know, the Duggars scandal, when Nicholas Gombert, a priest and the head of the choir for Charles V, found out that Nicholas Gombert, a fantastic composer, by the way, was sexually molesting boys in his choir. The church found out, and in cooperation with the Spanish government, defrocked him and sent him to be a galley slave for 30 years. That's way stiffer and way suckier than anything Josh Duggar might get outside of, I don't know, death. I don't know, if I was stuck in the hull of a 16th century rowing vessel, rowing for days on end with little food and little water in a dark, damp, wet, rocky, constantly moving ship across the seas, potentially my life in danger because I may be rowing into battle for all I know, or I may be attacked by Barbary pirates and enslaved on another vessel, so my term of servitude may never be completed, and I may be enslaved to the Muslims for the rest of my life. Yeah, I think Josh Duggar's going to get off pretty light, unless, somebody wants to build a galley and stuff a bunch of pedophiles in it and make them row for, 30 years. I mean, that would amuse me greatly, but, so that's how they handled that whole situation. Josh Duggar's not going to get anything that stiff. And talking about Quiverful, this radical fringe Protestant movement, this is what I was saying in my blog post earlier about how Protestantism just... they do crazy stuff. This is why I don't like Protestantism being lumped in with Christianity with us. Because I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is. They just... Why do they do so many crazy things? I don't understand it. I don't get what it is. Maybe it's the lack of authority. Maybe it's the emphasis on the individual. Maybe it's I contribute to any number of things why they do so much crazy stuff that they do. Found a country without any sort of religious principle, or guiding rod. I could list any number of things, but this is, or social examples even. This is just one tiny example, I don't know what it is about this craziness that just amplifies in them. And again, to the credit of, their brand of Protestantism Protestantism itself, Christianity, I don't think allows for this kind of behavior, but Quiverful is definitely contributing to this, because this is not the first time they've had to deal with something like this. This is by no means of the imagination, by no means the first time they've dealt with allegations of sexual abuse. Former members have come out and said that this kind of self-blaming, this kind of victim-blaming, encouraging not to report, is a very, it's a very dangerous thing. It's an unjust system, that in no way, shape, or form reflects true Christianity. It's heresy. And, remember how I said, I don't have a problem with people believing whatever they want to believe. People, have, they can believe whatever they want to believe, but the state needs to be in the business of protecting and propagating Catholicism. If people want to believe whatever they want to believe, that's fine. People cannot be forced to convert to something. That's an ingenuine conversion. We have very early church fathers saying that forced conversion is not allowed because it's not a genuine conversion. People have to decide from their inmost being to become Catholics, to become Christians. You can't force something like that. So I think that definitely, people are allowed to believe what they want, and in, Catholic kingdoms that was historically the case. So, I don't think we should necessarily subvert. We should necessarily subvert people's right to believe what they want. However, teaching religion with the force of fact gives you the ability to correct things like this. It gives you the ability to say, no, that's not Christianity, that's wrong, it's heresy. So, in addition to, being executed for being a repeat sex offender, and evading the law, we're just going to add heretic. We're just going to add heretic onto there, just because it's a fun word to say. Heretic. Yes, it's a fun word to say. Try saying it very angrily, and it's very fun to say. I won't, because I'm in a dorm, little apartment complex, thin walls. So you get the idea. You need some kind of force to protect and propagate, good ideas. If Catholicism is taught with the scientific force of fact that it needs to be, ultimately you can combat things like this. The state is in the business of propagating and teaching Catholicism, right? Not necessarily by force, but culture, art, media, these kinds of things. By doing so, and naturally this will produce artists. Uh, Writers, authors. It gives clerics freedom to operate. It gives missionaries freedom to operate. You're in the business of setting up a system wherein this kind of behavior would not be tolerated. On the grounds of religious expression. Quiverful could have been stopped in its tracks. Long before. Long before this ever became a huge issue like it is, because you know if some radical group is showing up and this is a systematic system of abuse, it doesn't have the right to hide behind the excuse, oh, we're a religion, you can't persecute us for what we believe. No, actually, we can. By encouraging people not to report, you are subverting the law. By creating an environment wherein these women are oppressed, and they, don't have any right to self-determination, you basically keep them inside this movement. You shun them when they leave, so clearly the only thing that matters to you is their membership and their obedience. This constant, the possibility of a whole environment, a whole subculture wherein pedophilia is rampant, creates an environment where venereal diseases can spread, where these women could be, they could be scarred for life. They could literally be psychologically damaged. There is such a thing as going insane from sexual abuse. It's happened to lots of women. In war-torn areas, they were abused by, a whole regiment of soldiers, and they just literally went insane. It's that kind of thing. So yeah, this movement could have been stopped in its tracks, because they are engaging in dangerous practices, under the guise of religion, and it could be subverted. And in much the same way, if a similar movement emerged in Catholicism, an Inquisition could very easily approach these Catholics and say, you need to stop right there. This is not correct. This is heresy. This is wrong. This is a negative environment. This is not a good thing. It's a bad thing. You could very easily do that. One of the things the Inquisition did, on record, was prosecute sexual offenders within the clergy. This is a documented thing. It's a thing. So it could easily do it again. And who's to say it wouldn't be? These lay groups that could start something similar to Quiverful would be in any way, shape, or form immune. They're baptized Catholics, aren't they? So you see my point, right? You're getting where I'm coming from with this. This whole movement, it just illustrates to me another reason why Catholicism should not in any way, shape, or form identify with Protestantism. Because when you do that, when you place it under the umbrella of Christianity, you heard me read that article. You heard me read that earlier. That these people think that this is what Christianity is. And Rome's attitude of treating all Christian groups like they're equal will in no way, shape, or form, help this. Any Catholics who are just as fanboy over Duck Dynasty and 19 Kids Accounting and all these other families on TV who are like this, all these people are in no way, shape, or form, they're in no way, shape, or form helping. They're not helping at this point. That's why I told all the Catholics who follow my page, drop these people like a hot potato if you haven't already. Okay, if you ever had anything to do with them, just drop them like a hot potato. It's not our business what happens here. Let the courts decide this, and the only thing you should want is for justice. The only thing you should want is that this goes to trial, that he's charged, and if he's subverted the law once, that his family are charged with obstruction of justice. If his family and his church was complicit in the covering up of this, they should be charged as well. No one is immune, no one is unreachable, no one is untouchable. That's how it should be. But who am I kidding? Politics is invested in the judiciary system at this point so much, nothing's probably going to come of it. I hope it does. I'd like to be proven wrong. I would like it to be a nonpartisan trial. That's on a simple matter of you violated the law. It doesn't matter what you believe. You violated the law. You don't have, you can't just, claim religious exception, with rape and child molestation. You can't just claim exception for something like that. So this is basically my whole point, is that these groups, they end up becoming so damaging to Catholicism, to Christianity, when we identify them with us, that we should not, it's not worth the effort, it's not worth the struggle, it's not worth the effort, Ultimately, my point here is that if these groups, these groups of people, they ultimately just give us a bad name. There's no reason to keep them as hanger-ons. It damages us. The NSIR itself, we're trying to build something here, okay? We're trying to create a movement for Catholics. We don't need this kind of bad press following us around. We don't need this kind of drama. We don't need this kind of bad image. We need to keep ourselves as clean as possible from stuff like this. And, we need to dispel the myths people have about us. And the Duggars are going to make that a lot harder. I don't want a single good, honest, decent traditional family being harassed by anyone who is not connected to this in any way, who is not guilty in any way, shape, or form of these crimes of any way, being assaulted or attacked or unjustly calumniated because of the actions of the Duggars. I don't want to see it. I don't want it being used as a reason to stop homeschooling. I don't want it being used as a reason that people should not have large families. I don't want to see it being used as a reason people should not try to live the lifestyle that human beings have been living in the West for the last God knows how many centuries. Okay? There is absolutely no reason to harass people who are not guilty of this in any way, shape, or form. Am I denying that, arch-conservative families may have dysfunctional families? No. There are liberals who have dysfunctional families. There are Muslims who have dysfunctional families. Catholics who have dysfunctional families. But none of these religions, none of these groups in their creed says, thou shalt have a dysfunctional family with an abusive, drunk father, a brother who rapes you, and a mom who just quietly sits by the window and smokes weed. Okay? That is nowhere in the tenets of any of these religions or any of these groups. There's no reason to treat them like it is. Okay? Now, Quiverful has been shown that this kind of environment of, covering up sex abuse and things is something that they regularly do. They need to be held accountable for that. As far as I can tell, Quiverful was not founded by the mandate of God. Okay? Nothing about it is. Okay? They can change how they do things in the least to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. If they won't, they need to be made to, because this kind of thing is dangerous to the public good of the nation and to the good of future, and to the safety of future children who may get, and families who may get roped into this. It's dangerous, But in no way, shape, or form should this reflect on non-connected traditional families who have nothing to do with Quiverful. I never even heard of Quiverful, and I'm the kind of guy who believes in the traditional family. I'm the kind of guy that wants to get married at some point and have a bunch of kids, and have a happy family, because I was denied that. I was denied that as a kid. I did not have even a normal American family upbringing. I was totally out of left field. I had an absentee mom, I had a non-existent dad, I was raised by my grandparents who were nice people, but there is no reason that a young kid should be raised by 70-year-olds, I'm not discrediting my grandparents here. I love them to death. They raised me, I call my grandpa dad, I've called my grandmother mom, more times than I can count, But, really, I would have benefited from young parents who could easily engage me and were not on the verge of retirement before I showed up, or who were not retiring before I showed up. My grandparents were retiring before I showed up. My grandpa went to work another 5 years just to make sure. He accepted promotions he didn't want. He took, on more and more responsibility that he didn't want. He didn't quit because I was going to be living with them for I was going to be dependent on them for at least the next 18 years of my life, okay, until I could be emancipated legally, I was going to be dependent on them. He went to work for another 5 years, took higher positions in the bank, higher positions in his job, more and more work, more and more responsibility, more and more time away from us, so that he could get a bigger paycheck, so that I could afford to go to college, so that I could afford to have all the things a kid needs, so that I could have a good upbringing. Okay? That was why he did what he did, and I respect him for that. But he shouldn't have had to do that. My parents should have ponied the fuck up and raised me. Everyone's parents should do that. If you're a kid that lives in a dysfunctional family, if you're a kid with absentee parents, you hold them to that shit. I don't care how old you are, how much time has passed. You owe me an upbringing. You owed me a childhood. You owed me a family. Okay? Abusive parents should be absolutely responsible for what happens to their kids. Okay? You brought that child into this world. It is your responsibility. Okay? He or she, whatever, is your responsibility. Okay? And if you in any way, shape, or form shirked your duties as a parent, you should definitely be punished for that. You deserve any amount of flack you get from your kids. You deserve all of it. Because, especially if you're one of those assholes who, shows up later in life, and tries to be active in your kid's life after they've adjusted to living with someone else and another routine. No, you don't get to do that. You do not get to do that. You weren't here for the rest of their life. Don't show up late and act like you deserve the authority and respect of the people who, actually raised them. And God help you if they were totally self-sufficient almost. God help you, But that's a rant for another time. My point is, as I said in my other blog post, imperfection is a feature of humanity. There is no perfect system. But we can damn sure try and follow the best system possible. We can damn sure, fight these issues like this. Catholicism in no way, shape, or form. I will not speak for other religions from this point. Catholicism in no way, shape, or form endorses or encourages these kinds of behaviors, these kind of, actions, this kind of abuse that these people have endured, under the Quiverful program. It in no way endorses, the actions of someone like Josh Duggar or his parents. Catholicism doesn't even let, the conciliarist clergy, who I am in doubt of whether or not they're actual clergy even, does not allow them to get away with what they did. Especially when in our history and in our past, a priest who was under the jurisdiction of the most powerful man in Christendom, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. I will not list off to you all his titles, which I would like to do, because it's literally a fucking paragraph. To summarize it up for you, he owns Europe, don't question it, unless you want a Landsknecht up your back end, or a whole legion of them pretty much, a whole cavalcade of, armies from all across Christendom that served with him. My point is that there's no excuse for letting that kind of thing slide in our religion when there's proof in the past that we didn't, because I'm sure people bring up to me that the sex abuse scandal, I have no room to talk. I don't claim those people. Okay? I do not claim them. Okay? There are serious doubts, and you can talk to all kinds of people. Just stay away from the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy nut jobs. They don't know what the frick they're talking about. They're pulling stuff from clerical gossip magazines in Italy that don't mean anything. It's about as reliable. Clerical gossip magazines, as I call them, or clerical magazines in Italy, have about as much, legitimacy as the tabloids at the supermarket. Okay, that's about how legitimate they are. It's just pointless mudslinging. That's all it is, and gossip columns. That's all they are. And that's where these people are ultimately getting their rumors from. You can go talk to people who have experience in this and who know all the intricacies. This is not the video to discuss. This video is already almost an hour long, and I've already ranted about this for too long as it is. You get the point, right? You get the point. These people are not genuine. They're not. This is not what Catholicism allows. But the point of making this video is I wanted to get this off my chest. I wanted to talk about all of this because there's a shitstorm coming, and I just want to get my voice out there before it's too late. What the Duggars do does not in any way reflect on other traditional families. Okay? I say this because there are lots of Catholics in my organization who are members of traditional families or who are the mother and or father of traditional families. Good parents who raised or are raising good kids who mean no harm, people who are the product of traditional families and who credit themselves and their successes to their families in the good environment they were raised in. Okay? Nobody is, these people, they're not with the Duggars. Okay? I can smell the witch hunt already coming. I can smell the suspicion already building. Do not, I repeat, do not hold suspect every traditional family because of the actions of another traditional family. That's a general rule unless you have reason to believe otherwise. Always trust, but verify that trust. There's no reason you should hold someone in suspect because of the crimes of someone else of their group, whatever that may be, race, creed, nationality, whatever. There's no reason to do that. It's illogical and it's animalistic. There's no reason to do that. Unless you have reason to believe otherwise, you should not do so. Okay? There's no reason you should. If we could just learn that in general, things would be a lot simpler in this country and in the world. Okay? We've just breached the 50-minute mark. That's all I have to say about this. I want to get as far away from the Duggar issue as possible by just simply getting all of that, my opinions on the matter, out of the way. This is why we need some kind of moral authority in this country that can touch questions like this, that can enforce them. Okay? We need religion to be taught again with the force of fact, because otherwise, crazy groups like this can just crop up at any time. Because we allow religion to be subject to the matters of opinion. Okay? We ultimately allow ourselves to do that. We don't try to fight these things. We don't try to confront them. We don't try to deal with them because we don't have the way to do so. We have to wait until they do something crazy. We cannot act on the preemptive signs of craziness. This is why we need something like this. This is why we shouldn't lump in Protestantism with Christianity. We should not call them our separated brethren. They're not our separated brethren. Your separated brethren this coming Sunday are probably going to go sit in their church and listen to a rant about how Catholics are all evil and Rome is the whore of Babylon, and they're all going to get the pastor a standing ovation just on principle. Okay? I can say that. And anybody who's raised Protestant can probably tell you the same thing is going to happen. Okay? You may have not seen it, but it has happened. I promise you. Okay? I went to tons of Protestant churches off and on as a kid, and almost at every single one of them, I can remember at some point in time, anti-Catholic bigotry being spouted by someone or something, at that church. I can distinctly remember it. This is why, we need, and you just shouldn't judge traditional families based on the actions of one bad person. Okay? Or the one bad group. Okay? And lastly, I don't care about the partisanship or the party membership or political beliefs, whatever, of Josh Duggar or any of his family. I could care less. Okay? Despite what an hour-long video may tell you, I could honestly care less about that subject. I've barely talked about that at all. I am not defending nor condemning the man. I'm simply stating the facts as I see them. Okay? That's what this court case should be about. That's what the trial should be about. It should be about just evidence, fact, proof, all of this stuff. Okay? We need this to be just, can we please get something right for once in these high-profile trials in America? Can we please, for once, not embarrass ourselves in front of the world? Okay? Just please, for once. That's all I have to say on the matter. And, anything else relating to Josh Duggar or anything else, will hopefully be none of my business. As I was telling someone else about this subject, when I just knew I'd have to make this video. As a commentator, there are just some things I wish I never had to talk about. So I wish I could ignore, never speak on, not think about, never worry about. Unfortunately, as long as there are human beings on this planet, moral ills will never be one of them.